YouTube.
Oh, yeah, I'll pull that up too. Good evening. Time is now 6:30. I'm Chairman Mike Curry, and I'd like to call the Select Board Workshop to order on this 4th day of November, 2020. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I hear Julie. Hi, Julie. Hi.
Hello.
Good evening.
Before we begin, I'd like to state for the record that not only are we being live streamed on YouTube web platform, and also TCTV cable station 8, but the entire proceeding this evening, except any executive sessions, are being recorded. And you can still watch it later on TCTV, but they've got their new server running, so live on TV cable station 8. Just going through a roll call for our quorum this night. I see Tim. Good evening, Tim. Good evening, Julie. Good evening, Terry. So we do have a quorum for this evening. Also with us tonight is Holly Young, Adam LaMontagne, Carter Terenzini, this consultant that we have now. And Jeff Bennett is also coming online as I speak. As always, our agenda for this evening has been set no later than 48 hours out by law and is publicly available at the official source for town information, templetonma.gov. Our agenda this evening is a workshop format. We've got a couple of items, but mostly it's kickoff items for our financial year. We will start off with one of the things that we tabled from our last meeting, our last business meeting, which is the amendment to the financial management policy. That's why Mr. Terenzini is joining us this evening. I'd like to let you know that public participation and comment are still possible via the chat section of the live stream on YouTube. I and TCTV are monitoring the chat section and will address comments and questions as they appear or when appropriate. There is a lag of approximately 10 seconds behind. I may not, based on the comment, I may not address it, but if it is necessary for the discussion, I will definitely make sure that I add that in there. This is a right afforded to non-residents. I'm sorry, the right afforded to the residents of the community. Non-residents can watch and comment, but if they have any questions, we really need people to go through the town's administration and website for processing. What did I have to say about the comments? The comment area has actually been working fairly well. Just pulling up the chat section now. The comment area. Perfect. And we have been on Zoom. Everyone has pretty much gotten the hang of Zoom. Make sure that that you are on mute unless you're speaking. And if you wish to speak, there's either a hand raise function or just politely break in and you'll get your chance to speak. And I think that is all the opening comments that I have. So our agenda tonight, I'll go ahead and share the agenda. Okay, you can see our agenda this evening. We've got Carter to brief or to remind us about amendment number 8 to the financial management policy. We have 4 Elm Street. Adam LaMontagne is going to give us a presentation on 4 Elm Street, and then discussion, and I don't believe we have action, but it's basically the discussion on the budget documents that will be kicking off our FY22 budget season. Okay. And with that, let's move to our first agenda item for our workshop, and that would be Amendment 8 to the Financial Management Policies. Good evening, Carter.
Good evening. How are you? Nice to be with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for setting aside some time to discuss this. I will tell you that my internet connection at this end is a bit unstable this evening. So if I'm not getting through well, just let me know and we'll circle back to it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're frozen right now. You may choose, Carter, to if you want to increase your bandwidth, you can go off of video. And, I mean, we can hear you, and your name will be up on the screen if that improves your connection.
Yeah, let's try to do that.
Okay. I could hear you fine, but your video was choppy.
Okay. So hopefully that helps. Amendment number 8 to the financial management policies proposes to do a couple of things. The first is dealing with the calculation of the reserve contributions. This section was set up to determine how one would allocate free cash once certified, setting aside a certain amount of money to meet unexpected needs, to plan to pay off the snow and ice deficit. And we had been setting aside the amount of monies that you would be expending upon capital projects. And the use of free cash for capital projects was, in fact, one of the specified uses of free cash. Where it fell apart a bit was on page 2 of the amendment, 4 lines down. We had been practicing this policy of setting aside monies for an annual capital budget prior to calculating the monies that would be transferred to the several funds. However, we had not explicitly included the wording to do that. So the proposed wording here would be to show that you would first deduct the amount of money anticipated to be needed at the annual town meeting for snow and ice in the capital budget. You would then make these other deductions, and then you would calculate the reserve for the working capital and the transfers to the general stabilization and the like. Do you want me to go through each of these sections, Mike, and then we'll return if there are questions, or do you want to try to deal with them section by section?
I think you gave a pretty good overview, but if you want to go section by section, that's fine, unless the board's had enough time with this where they really just only have questions, that's where I'm at.
What I'll do then, I'll go through each section and just give a brief pause, and then we can circle back.
Okay.
The next has to do with, so what do you do if any of these funds hit their targets? If these targets that we have in another section stay unchanged, you are actually pretty close to your target on the general stabilization. Based upon what we've outlined here, you will most likely agree that those initial targets, 5% of the omnibus budget for the general stabilization fund and 1% for the capital stabilization fund, well, they actually seemed very aggressive and unattainable at the time that we wrote it, are actually a little bit lower. So we thought that rather than having this question arise in the future, in the moment, we know that we need more money in the capital stabilization fund than is most likely going to get there quickly. And we also know that the OPEB reserve, and I know that your town administrator will speak with you a little bit later tonight on OPEB reserves.
Right.
The idea is to set up what was referred to as a waterfall. That is, think of a series of waterfalls where the water first comes over the edge and it fills the first pool. And when that pool is filled up, it runs over and it goes into the second pool. And when that pool fills up, it overflows that it's sort of like as these different levels are reached, gravity knows what to do. And the idea is to define our sense of gravity, your sense of gravity, in this waterfall approach. So it's automatic and there's no question about that. The next section is in B-2A. There certainly is a great deal of debate out there in the financial as to what is the correct fund balance to maintain in many different issues. In our case, when we originally set this up, we set it up as 5%. And as I say, 4 years ago, that was actually quite aspirational given the town's fiscal condition. You're right at the 5%. And I'm suggesting that you move it up to 8%. And how did I pick 8 when some towns will say 12, some will say 15? One city's actually at 35%, believe it or not. I picked 8% because that is 1 month's expenses. So if worse came to worse, you could actually go to your stabilization fund for 1 month of operating budget if you had to. And I am suggesting that you consider asking your advisory committee to study this question and to report back to your town administrator and this body as to what the right number is in the long term. Most everyone will be at 8% or above. So I don't think you run any great risk of having them come back and saying you overshot the target. You'll have some stress over the next few fiscal years, but 8% should still be relatively attainable. Comes the correct size of the capital stabilization fund. Again, aspirational, given where you were. It had been set at 1% of the prior year's omnibus operating budget. You're already there. You're actually about $55,000 above that. So if you follow the 1%, it would be 170,000. I'm suggesting that you raise it to 2% at this immediate moment, so that you continue to look at, again, asking your advisory committee to investigate, review, and report on what the correct level would be. When we wrote this, again, we were trying to get something done. You were in the midst of your financial problems, and we kind of, on some of these sections, frankly, went for a little bit of simplification and aspiration.
Right, you needed to prime the pump.
High complexity. Exactly. We are suggesting that you convert to a percentage of your capital investment. Your town administrator suggested perhaps using the schedule off of your insurance policy that values your buildings and all of your rolling stock. I think that as long as you remember there is one major investment that is not on that schedule, which is the Templeton Center or the Templeton Elementary School, that actually is a very good approach. That schedule is there. It's done by professionals every year. It reflects the value of what you have in capital investment. And so if you say, well, it's going to be 1% of that or even 0.5% of that. That's really a nice, clean way to do it without getting highly sophisticated. So those are the several changes that we've suggested that you make that we think are of some import to be followed perhaps by a review and recommendation report of your advisory committee should they be willing to undertake it with respect to what is stabilization funds. And it sets up a process by which at some point more monies will be going into that OPEB report. So by increasing contributions, continuing to push that trend rate on your health insurance down, continuing to deal with contribution rates, and then with the Worcester Regional Retirement System coming in at some point, you have a nice set of confluence that I think is going to make a major impact on making some real progress against that OPEB, liability. Happy to answer any questions, but I think that really is the best I can give you on this.
Thanks, Carter. I have a quick question. So you bring up the advisory committee and a study or otherwise. If we take action on this tonight to change the financial management policy, what is the timeline? Is that something that we institute within this budget year and ask the advisory committee to kind of keep their eye on it? In what relation, does the advisory committee have the ability to react to any action that we take tonight?
Well, I'm not quite sure to what extent you're going to involve them in revenue review. March, April, it'll be all hands on budget items. But I would think that if you determined to ask for this review and recommendation report, that it would be advisable to set a date certain of some fashion. And I would think that 4 to 6 months, even with the budget and holidays coming up, which would give you something in the realm of June or the summer months, and then make any changes as part of your next budget cycle would be time enough to get it done without it being too rushed. And I do believe that other than possibly converting the CapEx from a percentage of operating budget to a percentage of capital investment, these percentages will most likely hold up.
Okay. So Carter, these percentage recommendations, 8%, 2%, like they were 5% and 1%. This is on the path to getting to something where you can actually change the structure of the growth for these funds. So I think I understand that a little bit more on the road to it. Jeff, I know Mr. May's watching tonight because he is in favor of it. All Jeff, you, me, Bob, all former members of the advisory committee. Does that make sense to you?
First of all, I look at the last advisory from the Department of or Division of Local Services on free cash to try to generate 3 to 5% of your previous annual budget in free cash. I don't see, and I don't think we should set a limit on how much we are going to pay ourselves to save. We should try to save as much as we can. And as the policy now reads, have the the administrator shall have a target of having a remainder of no less than 50% of the certified free cash. This year, our net free cash was $1,327,538. So 50% of that would be $663,769. And again, I believe you should pay yourself first. Take our savings right off the top before you deduct anything, and break that 663 down to half of that to general stabilization, the third to capital, and then to OPEB. If you do that, you build up those reserves faster because you'll be putting larger amounts in them each time you make a deposit. And if you look at the revenue sheet that Kelly reported last week, you'll see there's general stabilization investment income along with capital stabilization investment income. By socking more money in there, in those funds, we earn more. And it's almost like free money. I mean, why would you not try to put as much money aside as you can? And why would you limit yourself by having a percent goal? I don't want to put 8% in there. If we can put 10, I want to put that much. I want to put as much away as we can because it helps on many fronts. Bond rating is one. In case we get another situation like 2003, and it might have been another one, but 2003, the town lost 125,000 or so in state aid because of a situation like we have now. State revenue was down. The state took $1 billion out of the state's rainy day fund. I don't know how they plan to make that up in fiscal 22. But to stay on the stabilization fund and the financial management policy, if the town had just followed what they put in writing, 50% right off the top, the totals that we have in these funds already would already be greater than what they are because we would have been making larger deposits. It simply got off track of the policy. And I kind of understand why they would do that because, we got all this big money, we got all this capital, we got to get started. So they started spending. And they tried to put away as much as they could and balance. Well, we got a lot of stuff to buy. A lot of it is expensive. Fire, the highway, that equipment is it's expensive. Fire is probably the most expensive, and then highway, although highway you need more pieces and you buy them kind of more often because they get more wear and tear on them. So I get that concept of, well, we'll take off the top and start getting newer equipment so we cut our maintenance costs. But I think we're at the point that we should restart and put bigger amounts right off the top.
But we're getting to that now.
Policy, just bigger amounts, and then take the other half and divide it up. Your snow and ice, your capital, and by putting bigger amounts into capital stabilization, I mean right off the top, we'll build that fund up a little quicker so we can actually have a capital plan budget. Because right now it's just dependent on free cash. We don't have a budget per se. We have a wish list, but you don't have, okay, highway, here's $200,000. What are you going to do this year? Police department, here's $100,000. What are you going to do? What cruises are you going to roll over? And there's the budget for it. We have a hodgepodge and a hope if the meals tax is big enough, we can, take some money from there and pay for a cruiser or do this and that. But I'm just a firm believer that if we followed the policy the way it's worded and took the 50% right off the top, we don't have to amend it. and we should be shooting to save as much as we can. I mean, if it's 10%, but fine. If it's 15%, if it's 8%, well, if that's what we have, that's what we have. But that's my thoughts on it. Again, if we would just go back, reset, and follow the policy the way it's worded, take your at least 50%. Take the 50% right off the top net and put it away, and then whatever's left, you spend on the capital and the snow and ice and other things. That's my thought on it. And again, rolling over free cash into the next year, to me, that's not a smart move, because you're giving the state money free when you could put it in one of these two stabilizations that earns income. That's revenue to the town. We're enlarging those funds by putting more money in it and investing it. And that's my thoughts. It's my 2 cents on this amendment.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Just I wanted to I know Carter's got his hand up, but I wanted to react to a couple of the things that you said. So working backwards, and I know Bob wanted to chime in on something as well, or had a comment on the YouTube chat. So a budget for capital, I understand what you're saying, but that's like getting to the end. What Carter described, that's like leaping forward. We have that life cycle management plan that tells us what we're supposed to, our targets for every year, what we should be looking for in that amount. I don't disagree with getting it to the point where it's a budget, but to try and start, turn it on its head and say, first I'm going to pay all these accounts and then I'll take what I have afterwards. I think we could get there. And then, really reading into what Carter was saying about the waterfall effect that his amendment had discussed, I think we can get to that point, but I want to take baby steps, because baby steps have worked for us so far. So if I'm going to go from a 1% and increase that by 100% to 2%, and I'm going to go from 5 to 8, I'm getting there. And I don't feel like it's capping us, like it's too small of a target. But I don't think that your idea is bad. I think it's actually a really good one. And I like the idea of the capital budget, but I'm not sure we're ready to leap to that yet. I am trying to pull up the financial management policy so I can read the section that you're talking about the town administrator and 50%. Bob had talked about putting money into the road stabilization account that you had discussed before. And then the possibility that you have to reorganize how we pay for capital. That's what Bob had said. Next is Carter.
Well, first, I want to address the issue of free cash, because I think there's something that's very important for you to keep in mind, as that number is certified each year. And that's the distinction between the gross amount of free cash that has been certified and the net amount of free cash that has been certified, that which is thrown off by your normal and ordinary operations. That is starting to flatten out. This year it was around right around 5%, which is the target for it. And bear in mind that each year, as you roll working capital from one year to the next, that number keeps appearing over and over and over again. So if you have $1,350,000 in year one, and you take 350 and you roll it into next year, and you have $1,350,000, it's 350,000 of the certified free cash in year two is what you had from year one, and so on and so forth. So I think that you want to be very careful to look at the difference between the gross and the net. Second, I think that Jeff is onto something in saying you don't want to limit yourself. And as I listen to that, I would suggest that you might want to use the phrasing that there'll be a target of at least 8% or a target of at least 2%. It isn't necessarily meant to be a cap initially, because until you can get your OPEB up and maybe get your road account rolling, and you're going to have that $500,000 in taxes coming off over the next couple of years as that debt tackles. My concern about turning this upside down and paying yourself first, which is a great household budgeting item and something you should always do, is your need for capital. Let's for a moment assume that you did follow Jeff's suggestion for this given year. And let's, for a moment, not distinguish between gross free cash and net free cash. So you had about $1,350,000, and if you took 50% and you put it into these several funds, as Jeff is suggesting, and then you take out your snow and ice deficit and some of your other things that pop up, you'd be down to a capital budget this year of roughly in the $350,000, with no money being rolled next year into free cash, no working capital, no money left in the till to get you started. And if you had the same numbers as next year, which would, let's say it's $1 million, and you took 50% off the top, you'd have 500,000. And then you take out 200, let's say, for snow and ice, you're down in the $300,000 for capital. My concern is that standing it on its head, at least at present, I don't think would meet your capital needs. This is a less aggressive approach, but it has preserved working capital to keep in the till. Every brand new business that opens always has to have some cash in the till and some money to pay bills while the new revenues are coming in. It has supported a relatively aggressive, robust capital program in the 650,000 plus or minus. And it has made, over the 4 years it has been in place, some pretty good progress in terms of funding these. So I think it's just what's important to you. And you measure those things out side by side, and then you determine what is best. Jeff's proposal will get you there the fastest and in the most aggressive manner. But on the flip side of no real working capital and a less robust capital program. This approach has given you a reasonable capital program and given you some working capital in the till, and has made steady progress. It's up to this board to weigh those out. I think each side has pluses, each side has some minuses, and you'll make the decision that's right for your community on your consideration of those pluses and minuses.
Thanks, Carter. Any other comments? Jeff, could you, what page on the financial management policy are you referring to? I think you're talking about page 7.
Yes.
And the total revenue figure that we're using, is that approximately 16 or 17 million?
17 million this year.
Okay.
Roughly, yeah, roughly.
Yeah, current projections. Never do math in public, right, Carter?
No.
So I got my calculator out, making sure I'm adding all the zeros that I need to, times 0.05. So we would make a contribution to, let's see, on the current policy, this general stabilization, we would be putting not less than 875,000, or actually, I'm including the school. What would be the figure?
17 million. So if you stand it on its head, you had $1.4 million, $1.3 million roughly in free cash. If you use Jeff's approach, you would take half of that, which is 700,000, and you would then divide it up on that formula. And you'd have roughly 400,000, give or take, for capital. And you can look at each of these 4 years of free cash, and you can see what that would have given you for capital, and maybe inform your decision that way.
And so if we're taking 700 off the top, what's that for?
If I'm understanding Jeff correctly, he's suggesting that you take 50% of the free cash and you put it into these 3 reserve funds immediately, and that with the remainder, you do your other things.
Got it. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I will, I just want to clarify one thing. This is not my suggestion. It's my reading of the current policy as it states right now. The financial management policy says, and I just don't believe it has been followed correctly for a couple of years. And I kind of understand why, because they wanted to have more money available to get capital stuff bought, because there were, departments were lined up. Hey, I need this. This is broke. This is broke. We're spending so much money on maintenance. But the policy right now, and you can find it online, and it states that the town administrator shall have a target of having a remainder of no less than 50% of the certified free cash. So, to me, by following that policy, you would take 50% of the net free cash, whatever it is. It's $1 million, $1.3 million this year. It's $1,327,538. I'm only suggesting that you follow the policy the way I read it. And then you have the other 50% to deal with snow and ice, and capital things that you're going to buy, because the policy reads, and Carter just explained, you're trying to build up the capital stabilization fund, much like I keep hearing we're trying to build up the ambulance receipts reserved for appropriation fund so they can buy stuff. But if you keep taking money out of it, it can't build up. So this isn't my plan or my suggestion. I am reading a policy, and as I read it, it should be 50% of the free cash right off the net, and take half of that and put it in, or 35% in general statement, divide it up just like it's currently stated. And the other half goes to back up snow and ice, because you never know. You could budget 500 grand and you might be short, so you never know what you're going to spend on snow and ice. And then for capital spending, that would come out of that other 50%. Right now, you're taking all that out first, and then whatever is left, you're putting in the reserves. I'm just reading the policy the other way, and it should be 50% off of the top. And I'll just make one other note in that Division of Local Services free cash recommendation or comment on it. It also talks about you should, budget conservatively, use revenue projections on the conservative side, and by putting more into stabilization funds, by saving more, there is less working capital. But as the DLS states, by eliminating the expectations of larger working capital amounts, say, department heads would know that they can't rely on that to backfill the budget later on. And as Prop 2.5 was intended to do, they would become more efficient and budget better. Because if you know, well, if I'm off some, yeah, there's a pile of cash over there, they can pay this and come back later and cover that cost. If you're tighter with things, the intent anyway, and the thought, and it should happen, is department heads would budget better and become more efficient. But again, this is not my suggestion out of the blue. I'm just reading the current policy and interpreting it that 50% of free cash into the stabilization funds is right off the top before you deduct everything else, not deduct stuff and then take half of whatever is left over. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay. And much like Carter was explaining, if we continue to make improvements to our financial management policy and the appropriate contributions, especially if we're doing all right, that we will get to that aspect of turning it around. Or, I mean, I want to be able to validate what you said about taking the top off. So you first get the free cash amount. The town administrator, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam or Carter, you're doing what the financial management policy says. You're taking unanticipated expenditures off the top, and then you're working with those the 50, the 35, the 10, and the 5 within those targets, correct? Go ahead, please, Carter.
Yes, and I mean, I think that, we read it one way, Jeff's reading it another, and this document has been evolving because remember,
I know.
We wrote the thing, and then we started living with it, and there have been some minor tweaks here and there. I think that one of the things to bear in mind is it's not just about a department head, managing their budget, but being sure we're giving them reasonable budgets. And in order to live within 2.5, there are some budgets where at times they just get cut. Period. End of story. So you'll do what you think is the best thing for the town. But this document, I think, will continually be an evolving budget as you work with it every year and you say, oh, we didn't say that quite right, or geez, the practice isn't quite working out the way worded, or we need to change this a little bit. And so having this budget continually undergoing that discussion, and Jeff reads it one way and we've read it another way, and maybe, it needs to kind of be charted. And as I said with Mr. May, geez, I had this epiphany that, yeah, you're right. We've not been practicing. It is not written around the way it was practiced. I think you're going to find tweaks that you want, and that's good. That shows that you're paying attention, you're watching your practices, you're watching your documents, and they're constantly under review and revision. Not revision just for the sake of revising them, because you're reflecting real world conditions as you're practicing them. So I think that's the best I can add on that.
Okay. Adam, you had your hand up? Thanks for that, Carter.
Yes, to that point, I think Carter spent a lot of time on this. He's very much involved with policy. I think having this dialogue continuing and providing some input, get to hear from the folks over at the advisory committee, I think we could continue this and come to some kind of consensus moving forward. That way, it provides a clear direction on how I'm going to be putting everything together and moving forward. But I think we can all agree that the town has significantly improved throughout the years, and we're certainly in a better place today. And I know all of us are here to make the town a better place each and every single day. And with that, I think be appropriate to send over to the advisory committee.
Well, I'm ready to act tonight. I mean, I think the trajectory that we are prescribing here is the right one. I think that as presented, those increases from 5 to 8 and from 1 to 2 make sense on this trajectory that we're trying to get to. I do see a much better running, well-oiled machine, if you want to use that metaphor that Jeff is describing, where if we have a road problem that is millions of dollars, but we only have, a certain amount of Chapter 90, we only have a certain amount that we can push toward it. So we get the medium, we accept medium risk rather than low or allowing high. I think this is in the right direction to get there, and it's an incremental approach.
I agree, and I think incrementally getting there is a good thing. But I also want to really get all the stakeholders that are involved in the budget process to have some kind of dialogue. I think that's important moving forward. I know Jeff wants to build up the reserves, and I admire that. But at the same token, I'm looking at the capital, and I kind of see both sides. But if we want to continue on making the improvements we're making, providing these public services to the residents, we got to take that into account as well. And we need to have a capital program at the same time. So it's really, I think, finding that balance. I think the chairman pointed out it's making incremental improvement. And I think that's the best way to bring about change in government. That's my way of looking at it. But I think we had this discussion. I think it was a great discussion. I think we've come a long way as a town under Carter and the board's leadership. And I think this can be a topic of discussion moving forward.
Tim, Terry, or Julie?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, please, Tim.
Looking at this, I like the way the numbers are looking. The question that I have, and even on the suggested amendment, under each of the sections, OPEB, OPEX, CapEx, one of the comments, and this is where we tend to fall down, is we shall endeavor to leave any balances unspent, excepting the event of emergency or extraordinary events. If it's necessary to draw down, endeavor to replenish the fund to the targeted policy. That's something I've not really seen happen, although it is recommended under the DOR best practices. And it was also a very strong suggestion when I did the MMA Municipal Finance 101 training, where they were recommending, yes, you can do this. Yes, you can move your free cash, put it into accounts that are actually making you money so it doesn't get recalculated into your free cash at the end of the fiscal year. And you can continually roll those numbers over. But as you deplete from it, you need to think about what's your plan to put it back. Kind of like borrowing from your 401k, if you will. And that actually made a lot of sense when Mr. Pooler presented that at the MMA conference.
Yep, and just to be clear, that the section that you read, so if we're looking at B2 of the financial management policy, you read section 2 to talk about unspent balances and extraordinary events. That's not to be changed this evening. The only amendments we're making are really to those two numbers, from 5 to 8 to 1 to 2. But I think your point is well made.
Yeah, understood. But as I'm reading this, that is our current policy, and that's
correct.
That we're not exactly following. And maybe it's time we start figuring out how are we going to get there. Can we do it right now? Oh, heavens no. And we're in the midst of this crisis management mode.
Right.
I've been spending to cover the other expenses. I understand that. But at some point, there will be a light in the end of the tunnel, and it won't be the oncoming freight train.
Yeah.
So we need to start planning for that as well.
True. I like Carter's explanation that 8% gives us actually a month of operating expense, as opposed to that it's not now, presumably that it's not.
Understood. Mr. Pooler was actually recommending a target of around 10%, which I thought was even, in our case, more appropriate.
Yep.
Give us just a little bit more of a pad.
Yeah, that's what Jeff said. Okay. Thoughts, Terry, Julie? Julie?
I have to say that for the last few years, as far as this budgeting is going, the baby steps, like you refer to, Mike, going the way that we're going now and following the policy that we created for the town, all it's done is given us positives. So I like where we're headed with this. I'm in support of what Carter's suggesting. And I'm wondering if it's not broken, why are we rushing something? Because years back, that has happened in this town. Oh boy, we have a little bit in the bank. What do we do now? We've lost thousands of dollars because we've gone from the baby step trying to build the budget to let's just jump in and make a quick change. And then we started at the bottom. When I first came on, we were really at the bottom. We've come a long way. And I think watching these numbers and doing the 8% is the way to go. It's not broken. Let's not try to fix it real fast. That's just my opinion.
Terry?
So what I'm hearing is that we wrote a policy was written, and there's a little bit of a discrepancy on how it should be followed. And then I had my first initial question was going to be to Carter is how do we know when we can make those little incremental increases? Because I'm in favor of a little over time. That's the way I approach things. So I agree with Julie and with you and Adam that it's the gradual increase over time. And my other question was going to be was how did it work in the past, which Julie just answered. When the big chunks were taken out, it didn't serve us well. So again, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Rome wasn't built in a day. Pick your proverb or whatever. Pick your proverb, but slow and steady wins the race is my opinion at this point, and especially with COVID. Do we need to change how it's written? Is it a matter of wordsmithing how it's written, or is it written just fine and the way it is? It's written the way it is. It's just a matter of who's interpreting it. I
think to Tim and Jeff's point, I think, and Mr. May in the chat section, we have to be our own stewards to make sure that we're following the financial management policies and that there's consensus. Yep, hang on one sec, Julie. Then that there's consensus in how we're doing that. This budget process, there are so many opportunities for someone to put up their hand and say, that's not what we should be doing here, and that we have the ability to make those changes or tweaks along the way. I think that it's kind of a companion discussion for what we're trying to do tonight. I think Mr. Terenzini recognized, to answer your question, he recognized the conditions were right to be able to make those progressive changes to our financial management policy. But there was the reminder, again, from like Tim and Jeff's perspective of, yeah, that's great. We have a long way to go. And by the way, we have to really watch what we're doing. Julie, did you have a rebuttal on that?
No, I understand. I mean, I understand some of this to some degree, but I agree that the way that we have been following it has been working for the most part. We have been following this policy, and we just have to take our time with it. And I agree with Jeff on the term that, you give a department head a budget. Templeton's well known for that. Let's overspend our budget. They'll figure it out. We just need to tell them they can't overspend their budgets. And we have done that for a few years, but it is slipping back to, they're starting to see money in the bank, and I think that they need to be really careful in assuming that we're going to make changes, in order to accommodate. That I don't know.
Thanks, Julie. Any other discussion or final comments from Carter or Adam? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve amendment number 8 to the financial management policies as presented, and for the select board. Actually, you know what? I withdraw my motion. I'm going to need someone else to make it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Jeff.
I just have a question. Talking about policies and follow them, the Board of Selectmen's operating procedures and policies says on workshops, unless extremely urgent or extraordinary circumstances require immediate action, no votes will be taken at the workshop. As a matter of fact, institution or changes to policy may first be discussed or reviewed and referred from the business meeting to a workshop. Is this really urgent?
No.
If we intend to send it to the advisory committee for any consideration or any look-see, they have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow, but it's too late for them to change their agenda,
Right.
so it would be 2 weeks.
That wasn't the intent. The intent was for the advisory committee to have their finger on the pulse of this. We set the policy, and they're going to help kind of track that direction. I definitely agree with you. I think that we had a lot of daylight in between last week when we said, you know what, we need to push this to a workshop to discuss it. So I think and it was on the agenda. So I think that we've known about it, but I'd be comfortable pushing this to a business meeting as a non-urgent manner to be dealt with in a workshop. Thoughts? Okay.
So would you need a motion to move it?
No, we just put it on the agenda.
Okay.
Holly's pen is moving vigorously right now.
So if I can, Mr. Chairman, you want me to follow up with the chair of the advisory committee to get?
No. So what Jeffson, and I'm not going to put words in Jeff's mouth, but what Carter had recommended is for the advisory board to be a partner in this discussion of how do you track this? How do you get to a better position? So if we're setting policy, number one, they're going to have, we're not asking for their permission right now. We're going to set this policy based on the recommendations of our financial, our CFO. Based on that, the advisory committee is going to have observations, recommendations, and then we'll actually wind up having discussion over time. So it wasn't an intent to push this to the advisory committee. I was a little bit too fast to try and make a motion this evening. I think Jeff is 100% correct. We talk about following policies and then we go against one on top of the other. I think that's not good for us. So placing it on the next agenda for action, I think is actually good. And that's what I would advocate for.
I agree.
We don't need a vote on that because all we need is consensus to say, yeah, let's put this on the next business meeting. And that's the top tip of the hat to you and Holly to make sure that it gets on the agenda.
And so what would be the homework?
Well, we're doing it right now. The homework is to think more about it. And that way, when we actually do bring it up for a vote in a business meeting, we bring new information or a new thought or otherwise. But the workshop, we kind of talk through it, which I thought it was an excellent discussion. So the homework is really just to continue thinking on it. If you want to have a discussion, yeah.
to rewrite the policy? We'd have to, is that what the thinking is going to be, to rewrite it so that we're following what we're saying, like our actions are following what's written? Because that, I think,
So Carter came to us during the last meeting and he said, I have a proposed amendment to the financial management policy. We all felt that we did not have enough time with it on the report, not the report, the agenda, that for discussion purposes amongst all of us, we did not have enough time to do that. So we referred it to workshop. Now that we're pulling it back out of workshop to be put on the agenda, everything that we're talking about is then going to guide our decisions in the next meeting. Does that make sense?
and then we hand it to advisory?
No, advisory monitors the fact that we're changing our financial management policy. So they could put it on their agenda to say, hey, did you see that the Board of Selectmen changed the financial management policy and they've increased the stabilization to 8% and the OPEB to 2%. And then based on the communication between the two boards, watching their meetings or otherwise, we wind up having, I don't know if dialogue is the right word, we wind up having input from them on, is this the right direction? Could we go further? Or do we need to do something more dramatic? And I think Carter characterized Jeff's suggestion to kind of turn it on its head, take that whole table and turn it upside down on the 50% first, and then waterfall the rest of the requirements.
Gotcha.
So there's the action to send anything to advisory board. It's not part of this. The action is the recommendation of our CFO to increase capitalization. Stabilization, and I am talking about the two correct accounts, right? Stabilization and
CapEx reserve, rolling.
capital stabilization.
So it says, I recommend the incoming town administrator that he requests the advisory committee to study and report to him on the appropriate target for each fund and the basis for the calculation thereof with respect to CapEx reserve. I would suggest it should be on the basis of your investment in plant and rolling stock.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I thought that they were going to come back with their thoughts.
Because that was my initial question, was how do we know when to make these things grow from, like, we're going from the 5% to 8%, 1% to 2%, I think it is. And,
Correct.
And we do want to grow incrementally over time from what I'm hearing, that works. So that was my question. Initial question was, how do we know when? And apparently that's what the study for the advisory committee would be, is how to do this, how to tell when it's time to go up a little.
Yeah, they would be the ones doing the study. That's the way I interpreted it. Yeah, and then the board would act upon that.
Carter, you have your hand up.
Well, I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, that I think 8% and 2% of the omnibus budgets is going to be too low, and that study what higher number would be appropriate would be helpful.
So that ties in with what Tim said.
Be a good division of labor. We've gone from 1.2.
Yeah, Carter, you're coming.
1.35 individuals in your administrator staff to basically one.
Just so you know, you're coming in and out. We're hearing a couple of words in space.
Can you hear me now? Okay, Michael?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what I was saying was that a higher figure, I think I'll recognize, will be needed. The thought was
Oh, he's breaking up again.
within their remit. But I will say that it remains the policy of the board to the province of the board to actually follow. I know you spent quite a bit of time on this tonight, and you have many other items. So if there are continuing questions, perhaps you want to set this aside. I'd be more than happy to come back on another occasion and chat with you. But I do know you've got quite a bit of workload ahead of you yet this evening.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, may I just add one last thing then?
Right.
That seems like it ties in with what Tim said, that Sandy Polar recommended 12%, or it can go as high as 12%. If I was hearing Tim correctly, that, and Carter was saying it's too low, send it to the advisory committee, see what, don't just take this figure that I threw out there, but see what that really figure would work. And then go for that one based on what the advisory committee is saying.
How does the board feel on that? I mean, we need to have some consensus. We're either going to do something, or we're gonna play ping pong and throw this thing around and not actually make the increases. Go ahead, Julie.
You know what? I don't want to play ping pong. We set policy, we set budget. That's all I have to say about this. And if we go back and forth and we look for recommendation, and now we can either go with, Carter's recommendation on what to do next, or go with the advisory board, we're just going to go back and forth. There was something given to us by, in writing, asking us to review this, look at these numbers, see what we think of it, and vote on it. I agree that it can go to a meeting, bring it up at a meeting. This is not a meeting, so let's vote at a meeting. And in the meantime, sure, if you want to get the opinion of that other committee, that's great. The Board of Selectmen set the budget.
Tim, you had something?
I did. I have to echo Julie's sentiment. We set the policy, and we tell, once we put this out, that is the policy to be followed. I have no heartaches with the advisory committee looking over this. They're our watchdog, and they should be the ones looking at all this, reporting back to us. Are we meeting the mark? Or are we not meeting the mark? If we're not, what do they recommend we do to get there? So I don't have any disparity over what we're presenting. The numbers we can adjust as we need to, but yeah, we certainly need to make some changes. And I really feel that overall in our financial, we can do a better job than we've been doing. I'm not saying we've been doing bad, but there's always room for improvement.
Thanks, Tim. I agree.
Just want the best for the town. And if it takes a little
I didn't hear
time,
what you said.
if it takes a little time, and we end up getting more money to do better for our people, for the people in town, then I'm happy.
So let me do this. Let me talk to Tom. If you guys can give me some consensus tonight, let me talk with Mr. Smith, the chair, and let me see what his feelings are about taking this on as an agenda item. I said earlier, like when Jeff had said this is not an urgent matter, I think we have a little bit of room here. I'd like to make a decision. I agree with Julie and Tim, but if olive branch wise, let me talk with Tom and see if he wants to take this on as an agenda item before we put this to a vote. How does that sound?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, Carter, thanks for hanging with us for an hour and 9 minutes. I'm sure you thought it would be a shorter conversation, but it's a workshop, and I'm glad that we were able to kind of talk through a lot of these issues. So thank you for joining us this evening.
You're quite welcome. They're all pleasant conversations, Jeff. I'm sticking to that statement. And I wish you well for the rest of your meeting tonight.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Carter.
All right, we're going to move on to our fourth agenda item for this evening, which is for Elm Project, for Elm Street Project in Baldwinville. Adam, are you all ready?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is on the agenda as for Elm Project. Many of you know this has went in front of the Conservation Commission, and they made a recommendation on the name change to River's Edge Conservation Area. And I would like at some point in the near future for the board to formally adopt that name change. That way we could have it listed that way in the BVA under this account. And before they made that recommendation, you see on your screen in front of you a survey that was done for roughly a 1 month period where people in the town were able to take the survey, and I would say 38 out of the respondents chose River's Edge Conservation Area, which received the higher amount of votes, with the town engaged in the process, participating. And this is a project, I mean, we've talked about this at our workshop, really prioritizing our projects, and I really want to stay focused on this one and get this done. Also, before I went to conservation, I was at CPC talking with them on this project. I will be going back to them because I'm looking for the CPC to fund an architecture study out of the roughly $37,000 that's appropriated. The architect study would be about $1,000. And I think that will give us a good plan moving forward and having us be within budget. I want to make sure the money is expended. The money has been appropriated. This is going to the town meeting vote back, I believe, 2015, if I remember correctly, off the top of my head. This is something that town meeting wanted to get done. They wanted open space recreation. This is an idea, and that was done before I came here. And we just want to get that carried out. This is the appropriate process to follow. And quite frankly, I think this could be a beautiful thing that could be accomplished with having the right people on it. I did reach out to the police chief about any potential safety concerns of going in and out of there. And he did not indicate to me any. With that, there was a building there at one point. We really want to have that be a conservation area where people in town, whether they're walking, they grab a pizza, they're waiting at the garage, they could sit there and enjoy the beautiful nature, the environment. I think we all want a better place for people to really see the history by having a little area out there of the history of the river and maybe a little information about the flood that occurred, and really seeing the landscape and having it look nice. I mean, right now you drive by, it looks like a sand pit, and any improvement there, I think we can all agree would be a good thing for the town.
You're just saying that because you're a resident now. No, thank you for that report. I appreciate it. I think River's Edge is got a nice ring to it. But yeah, we're looking forward to how this will proceed.
And this is also one of the goals of the board. So if I could get permission, basically, to place this upon your business meeting for a formal name change vote. Just consensus there.
I don't have any issue. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yep, please.
Just as a reminder, Adam is correct. It was Article 6, November 9th, special town meeting in 2015. And we talk a lot about getting people back to town meeting and getting them involved and stuff. And this is an example of a town meeting vote that they voted to, use CPC funds to tear down that old town building that was the town clerk's office. Conservation Commission at one time was in there at the same time, and Community Opportunities Group, which does grant works mostly for CBGB. But there was a town meeting vote for CPC money to tear that down, and then the leftover funds to be a conservation area in control or overseen by the Conservation Commission. And once again, it was an example of there was money there, and all of a sudden they're going to be a veterans park and use that money, this, that, and other thing. And by correcting this and doing what town meeting voted for, hopefully people will see this and maybe think that they can trust their government some more. And hopefully it's a little step towards getting people back to going to town meeting, because they will know, hey, if we vote for something, maybe they're actually going to follow our vote instead of how it has happened in the past. So this is a good thing to happen, to correct, and to follow through on a town meeting vote. So that's all I have on that.
I think you're muted, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I said, thanks, Jeff. I agree.
And also, if I could recognize Sheila Pelletier, because she has she volunteered a lot of time on this, working on the rough draft, the plan, everything, which I will say I did speak with the architect briefly, and he was pretty impressed.
Good. All right. I think I saw a lot of people nodding their head. So there's the consensus to proceed with what you had asked for.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. I saw some thumbs up. All right. We're going to move on to our budget, our FY22 discussion this evening. Adam, you're leading this discussion, or is this just a document review?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Did you want me to go, or did?
Yep. We've got we're going to review goals in the work plan, our general budget guidance, our countdown to town meeting, revenue estimates, comparison communities document, and our OPEB reports.
Okay, I'll start with the select board work plan. Okay. I believe the board's intent, we went through that meeting. We had a lengthy discussion on all the goals, and I think we can be proud of the accomplishments we've done. I mean, this was I believe, if I remember correctly, Mr. Chairman, it was 11 by 18 sheet of paper. This has now been significantly down to a standard size piece of paper. We've accomplished quite a bit of goals for the town, from moving the sewer collections to town hall to the biweekly payroll, direct deposit. I mean, we've accomplished quite a bit. And I think that's something we could all be proud of. So I went through and I really tried to narrow this down. Holly even spent some time on this, making sure we had everything that the board wanted from that. And we really, I mean, I'll tell you, I had this to make the margins a little bit smaller to fit everything in there, but I'm pretty sure we've covered quite a bit. And I think we could even check off one of them, Mr. Chairman, utilizing the software for data transparency for fiscal year 21, because that passed town meeting. I guess we could leave it on there till it's fully completed. But with that, I think things here with the board's intent, and that's all I really have for this one.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation on the software. I'm very excited about that. And to try and get some of that information out to the public on how they can use that. I know you and I had talked about doing a kickoff. That's something we'll have to get back to ClearGov on, and I'd like to really get that going. Any comments on our work plan? Basically, we're just looking at the refined product from our retreat. If there are any changes, if you saw anything in the agenda packet, just let us know. Otherwise, I'm good.
Mr. Chairman? I was
Yes,
just
go ahead, Terry.
wondering on the bulk well testing, if we should do a survey to see if it's something that we want to move forward for, if there's an interest, and how many, what a good number might be to shoot for, to say yay or nay.
If I can, so I just amend that to include in parentheses, start with a survey.
What do you think?
I think that's fair. I think people in town enjoy the surveys.
What does everyone else think?
Oh, I mean, it's up to the board.
It's on our plan. I mean, I think we're definitely moving forward with it. I don't recall the discussion on it, but if it's on there, then that is our board's intent to make sure that Adam, when he's preparing the budget, is taking that into a consideration. So yeah, 100%, Terry.
I will make that change because right now I have planning, and I could include that as part of the planning and start is the survey.
That would
in that portion.
Yeah, I would talk with Lori about it.
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Any other changes from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Yep, go ahead, Tim.
not a change, but I think it's really nice to see a finished product that we've been able to whittle down, reformat, and get it into a more manageable piece of paper that we can immediately reference and fall back to. And hats off to Adam. I know it was a lot of work to get to what we're looking at right now.
Thanks, Tim. And I think the department heads feel a little bit better getting this than that long sheet, and it can be a little overwhelming at times. But to see the product of our hard work, it certainly means a lot. And it's really a team effort with the board, the department heads, staff coming together and getting these accomplished. And hats off. I forgot to mention. I apologize. TCTV live streaming.
Yep.
Another one. And I mean, it's one of these things where we're making progress. We're incrementally getting there, and I think hats off to all of us. With that, Mr. Chairman, are you on?
Sorry, I just wanted to. I ran up the stairs. I wanted to get the family to turn it on channel 8 and say, "Hey, confirm to me that you can watch the live stream," as a proof of concept. Okay, we're moving on. This is now the budget guidance from the town administrator to department heads, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. It was actually funny when you stepped away. I was ready for Selectman Bennett or Select Board Member Bennett to jump on as take over.
But he would. He's good that way.
He was ready. I saw him looking. He was ready to jump on.
All right,
Okay.
Adam, I'm projecting your budget guidance to the departments just as a so people watching can see it's in the agenda packet, but just that it's a draft document. But please go ahead.
Yes, with this is the draft document that we send out early December to the department heads. We usually give about a month period of time for them to get all their materials together. This gives them the guidance. I believe this year, if I can remember correctly, I think all the department heads have been through this process. So this isn't new to really anybody. A lot of them are experienced. I do have some things that I would like to go over with the board. If we go to page 3. And you see I have that highlighted. The board for non-union raises, there's at least the way I've done it before I came to Templeton, we would include the wage increases in the budget, or the way I've done it since I've been here was we put a reserve or away in the select board intergovernmental sub-account. I want to get the board's feelings on this, whether they feel we should continue this practice the way we've been doing it, or would the board feel more comfortable if I were to include it in the budget?
Under what, the actual department accounts?
Correct. It would be similar to how we, like the union raises are already baked into the budget. Contractual raises are baked into the budget. And I think consistency wise, I think putting them all into the budget would be something I could do, or I could continue doing it this method. I just wanted to get the board's thought on it and see what their feelings are.
So the way that it's done now is, as it says there on the screen, we do a budget transfer based on the recommended raises, and we vote on that. How would it work if you were putting the money in the department budgets based on their request? Remember, this is a zero budget, so they're basically going to plan for raises. My feeling is that if we're controlling that and understanding where it is, the way that we've been doing it makes sense. I get it that it's an additional transfer request. I don't see a need to change that, but I defer to my board members, my fellow board members.
So the way that it plays out is they cap at 2%. There's no it's not going to be let's interview everybody and go over how your year went and you get a merit raise. It's no longer a merit raise. It's just a fixed 2%.
Well, that's a discussion for that was think in terms of a 2% for all. That's them for their reserve. For the sewer department, I think that's a discussion that I would have to really sit down and think about, but I'm talking more of the process. I could include it in the department budgets, or I could put it in our intergovernmental account and transfer it out like we've been doing at least 2 years since I've been here. I'm fine with either way. I know the chairman pointed out he's comfortable with the current way of doing it. If that's the will of the board, I will continue to do that.
This ties into reviews as well. I mean, Jeff, if we have the management of the raises, understanding we're not talking about the actual, what are the, pluses, minus numbers and otherwise what the actual raise should be. So we do employee reviews, and we have this managed method by which the raises are, the money required for those accounts to go up is based on that request of a transfer. If we switch it around, would you not, what happens if you have unexpended funds in those accounts? Did it just stay in that account? Do we transfer them back?
If they're not staying within their budget account, budget, you're saying, Mr. Chairman?
So if you gave DPW, I don't know, what, $20,000 within their budget to account for raises and otherwise, it's up to the department head to be able to recommend those or not. And then based on whether they expend that entire personnel line item for a raise, they're either going to give the money back or they're going to expend every single penny. If I was a department head, I would expend every single penny, right?
I mean, it's all a matter of process. I don't think just because you include somebody's in their budget, their pay increase in their particular budget, you don't need to, that would eliminate the review process. I don't.
No, I get what you're saying.
So
my preference is for the select board.
So
go ahead.
There's unless there's an increase in the minimum wage law and So the way you have it worded is unless a person is under contract or they can't get a raise unless they're under contract, unless the minimum wage goes up. So say you have a person that's been there 2 years and they still don't have a contract, they're not going to get a raise unless minimum wage goes up.
That's more for folks that are making, let's say, $12.75 minimum wage goes up to $13.50. It's more to keep track of that their increases in the budget, and that way we're following the minimum wage law.
But they wouldn't get a raise otherwise?
No. That's for employees, let's say, that are, and there's not many of them that are so close to it, and then by minimum wage going up, that we by law, we have to make sure their minimum wage and they're paid as well. See, if they're under contract, like if you have a union agreement, for example, like any department that has union employees, they have in the CBA agreement, in there, it spells out the schedule and what their salary is. So the union wages are baked into the budget already. Contracts already settled by us are in the budget already.
Okay.
That's what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to weigh in on that.
Yep, go ahead.
I agree with you. I think it should be left right where it is. I think that if you put it into the budgets of the department heads, it's going to be harder to watch it.
Yeah, and all we're doing is it's a budget. It's not like we're restricting the department heads. We're not taking something away from them. Just when they're ready to execute, we wind up having it as it's a select board account, but it's managed by the town administrator. And so he comes to us to request the budget transfer based on whatever raise schedule he has for the year.
Correct. I agree with leaving it where it is.
So if that's consensus,
visibility too.
So if that's consensus of the board, I'll just unhighlight it.
Well, it's Mike and Julie. Terry had some questions. I haven't heard from Tim or Jeff yet. Yes, Jeff.
I look at this two ways. One, non-union personnel have historically taken the hits, the hardest and biggest, when you have to make budget cuts. Also, with the transfer, and they're listed as merit increases or equity, it leaves the appearance, and this is just, the appearance that if you take off the administrator, you're not getting a raise. If you bake the raise into the budget, say a person is making $15 an hour, you give them a 2% raise. So let's just say their salary was $30,000 a year. And you give them a raise and it equals $2,000 a year. The budget would say their salary for administrative assistant for the highway department. Last year it was $30,000 and you're getting a raise, and so this year it's $32,000. It's, the department head wouldn't be saying, well, I'm controlling their raise. It would just be their salary would increase. So at the July 1, the new fiscal year, their salary increases from what it was the previous fiscal year. And on the other side of the coin, I get where selectmen may say, well, we don't want to just give automatics. We want to have that raise there as an incentive to not only do your job, but do better, do more things so you merit that increase. It comes down to, the judgment thing. In the past, and I'll go back a few years, there used to be a town meeting vote to give a cost of living increase to all non-union employees, because the unions, police, the sewer, and the highway, they all have union agreements, and their wages are set. They're going to get a raise this year, the next year, and the next year until the next contract comes around. So, and again, my thought is, the non-union employees have historically, they take the hits. If you have to cut a budget, because you don't have to get no agreement, you don't have to go to the union and, back and forth. It's the easiest route. You just, non-union people, you get cut. The unions, they could always volunteer to take a hit, but non-union, you just, sorry, your hours are cut and boom, your money goes down. So it's two sides of that story. It just depends. Do you want to have that, I don't know, carrot and stick for a better word, the merit increase where you do this and you get that, or do you want to have an automatic cost of living or an increase year to year in the budget? That department's budget for salaries will increase by, whatever the 2% number happens to be for non-union personnel. The department heads, their salaries go, are looked at a different scale. If they have an employment agreement, it's, it says in there, like the highway superintendent or DPW, Bob Soze, is, it's listed in there. Year 1 is going to be this much salary, year 2, year 3. But the secretary over there is non-union, and now she's tied to that intergovernmental transfer for merit and equity raises.
To Jeff's point, though,
I kind of like baking it in the budget, but it's just, to me, it's they will get their raise, and it's actually more than just a cost of living increase. And you tie it to something, the consumer index, whatever it may be, Social Security goes up, that's what the annual increase would be. It's just, do you want to have that, you earn that raise, or you just get a cost of living increase automatic? I just think of the non-union employees. They always historically have taken the hit when hard financial times come, because they don't have much to, they don't have that labor agreement. And that's my nickel's worth.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Adam, before I get to your hand raised, Mr. May has made a comment on the live stream. Why should non-union be held to different standards than unions? It does require department to manage staff, not just retain anyone with a heartbeat, or he said breathing. Sorry. Adam?
I was just going to also add to what Select Board Member Bennett said. I would assign the raise, and then it would be effective July 1, when the new budget goes into effect.
I appreciate Jeff's explanation of it, especially on both sides of it. But I still, as it's on the screen right now, or I stop the share, I'm comfortable with it as it appears.
As am I.
Tim or Terry?
I'm good with it as presented. I just want to make sure we're not just arbitrarily throwing out there that because you work here, you can expect a raise annually. I'm usually of the mindset I want to see an annual review, and it's more of a merit pace. But I understand the intent of what is written here as well.
Yep, agreed, Tim. And the Templeton administrative staff has been much better about that over the past few years, where we didn't have a review process prior to that. So we're headed in the right direction from what you and Mr. May has said online. Terry, please go ahead.
Would the merit raise be higher than 2%? Could it be higher than 2%?
The department heads could certainly make that recommendation. I mean, I don't think that's what we're that's not the conversation right now,
Right.
but I don't know if it's a cap or otherwise. I think there is a little bit of a consensus about trying not to treat the non-union employees like the low-hanging fruit or otherwise. I like to think of it like Tim was talking about. If you have merit, if you have superstars that are non-union, then we need to make sure that we're retaining those people and to offer fair wages. In Templeton, we need to catch up. We have statistically paid our staff less than what the area's amounts are, and we're making. Last week we did the contract for Bob Sozik, and we're trying to get him on par with other DPW heads. So I don't think it's out of bounds that it wouldn't be over. That's really just not the conversation that we're having tonight.
No.
We want to make sure that Adam understands how he's going to arrange the budget.
So it's already built in, the merit raises are already built in, rather than just the 2%.
He will request that reserve. So he will do the work to be able to say, here is my raise schedule, if you want to call it that. He is going to request that amount of money and present it to it in a budget. What he's saying is, when I do that, when I request the budget of you, I'm going to put the salary increases or the request for raise in the selectmen's fund rather than the department funds. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. And you're good with that?
Keep it as it is. Yeah.
Okay. I think we can move on. Adam, your next spot.
Okay, thank you. I just want some guidance on that aspect.
Okay.
We will continue to do how we've been doing it. And another thing, the budgets. I remember last budget year, I remember there was a lot of discussion on perhaps doing these budgets electronically. I know some folks are hard copy, and we could certainly provide a hard copy of the budget to anybody that requests one to cut down on the paper, the time, the energy. For anybody that wants one, we can be sure to have a paper copy. But I know some people brought up, I know. I'll be more than happy to provide electronic copies, but let's say anybody particularly wants a paper copy, I'll be sure to do that. I wanted to see what the board thought about changing it over, where instead of me printing up, all these books, I could simply have it all on Excel and send it out.
I like having the budget binder. Our financial management team has done such a great job putting that document together. I think what becomes difficult after that initial publishing is the amendments. It becomes very difficult to say remove page 137. Put this one in. I would think that at least we have a printed first draft or first copy, and then anything afterwards is going to have to be electronic, because it does become difficult. I forget last year how we wound up doing it, but I like having the budget book. It certainly facilitates. I'm a computer guy too. I mean, I sat there in our Saturday meeting with my laptop, but I absolutely think that there is a lot to be gained by having that printed binder for the selected people that would be a part of that process. That's all I have to say. I don't know what the rest of the board might think.
I agree. The initial is a good idea. Any changes could be electronic.
Terry?
Still like the hard copy. I like to write in it and make notes and put my questions in and be able to go through it page by page. So I would prefer the binder, please.
So I see consensus. Tim, the hard copy, then any amendments electronic? We have consensus on that, Tim, Jeff?
Yes, like Perry, I like to highlight or cross-reference and tab things so I can find them quickly. But I have no problems with an electronic change.
Okay, great.
Jeff, are you good with electronic updates?
Yeah, I'll print them out anyway, but the initial copy,
Yeah.
I like hard copy.
Zoom won't let me show my budget book. I'm holding something up right now, but you can't see it. Ready? Book. No book. No book. Okay. Adam, what's next?
Next on here is the countdown calendar.
Here you go, Terry.
Mr. Chair, before we go, I just have a question on the annual report stuff.
Yes.
It says all annual reports need to be submitted by 12 p.m. on Wednesday, February 24th. It says after that, we can't guarantee inclusion of any reports submitted after that date. The thing I have is we have a bylaw it's chapter 71-2 that says all officers, boards, and committees and special committees having charge of expenditure of town money shall annually report therein in writing. Such reports shall be submitted to the Board of Selectmen for inclusion in the annual report on or before the 31st day of January of each year. So is the 24th, is that the day when the product goes off to the printer? Or are we saying you have to have all your stuff submitted by the 24th of February so they can go to the printer?
Holly, would you mind jumping in? Because I know you work on that. I spend a lot of time on the annual report.
Yeah.
I hate to be pesky with the bylaw.
No, it's okay, because I just usually confer with Holly, and she spends a lot of time making that look pretty and getting everything together.
Yeah, so I usually give them a date in February that it has to be to me. And like, I've been bugging them for months already, and I still only have a few so far. That doesn't go to the printer until, I don't know, probably April sometime. But I have to have all of it so I can put it in order, or it affects the formatting. And if I don't have it all to begin with before I do it, then it's really difficult to put it together. So that's why I give them that deadline.
So our bylaw says the deadline is January 31st. And this year, or fiscal 2021, the 31st is a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just follow the bylaw and make sure that they have it in by February 1st.
That would be, it's either you go the last Thursday or Friday, or you go give them that next day.
So instead of the beginning of January, the bylaw says 21st.
31st.
Oh, 31st, excuse me. That's a Sunday. So why don't we just do the 28th of January? I can make that change.
Or give them till, like Julie said, the Monday, February 1st.
Oh, you want to do Monday? Okay.
I'm just.
Is that what Julie said? Julie?
I believe.
Yeah, I suggested it either way. To follow the bylaw, I guess you would go back to the 28th of January, having it in there or whatnot. But it really doesn't matter to me. But yeah, take away the end of February, because if she's already been pestering people and she only has a couple already, maybe this will get people to move.
Well, the thing is, I've already sent out the memo on when it was due. So do you want me to edit that and make it a sooner deadline?
I
Wait,
mean,
well, you could just say the board, there's consensus at the workshop that and the board's looking at getting it in earlier. And I think that's a good thing. Holly, you shouldn't have to be chasing people down for it.
No, I agree. Is that a new bylaw? You know, Jeff? Because I don't recall seeing that.
I don't either, but Jeff
I'll make
knows
it-
the
I'll make a
bylaws
note of
better
it.
than me.
it's the one that's online right now.
Okay, I'll make a note of it, and then I can also put that in for next year.
If you need to, Holly, just use that for your excuse that you need them earlier. We're following bylaws.
Okay.
Hey, you can blame me.
And definitely blame Jeff on that one.
Yeah, Holly, you can make that work.
Yep.
I will make that change in the guidance document. Anything else on the guidance document?
I got nothing else.
Great.
Okay, I have the countdown calendar up, Adam.
And on the countdown calendar, I'll also make that deadline to submit annual town report. I'll make that change there for Wednesday. It's in here Wednesday, February 24th. I'll just make that change to January 28th. Thursday, January 28th. Outside of that, anybody else have any concerns about the countdown calendar?
I had what it looks like to me on this, and I'm broadcasting the screen right now. You've marked off the things that we've already done.
Mhm.
I would like to leave the dates there, and if you could add another column that we could use to say done or complete. But I don't want to lose the dates because it winds up becoming a good reference document to go
So
back
add
to.
the dates. Okay.
Yeah, so as we're going through this, definitely change it, like when was the goal setting retreat? When was the fall town meeting? I don't want to tick them off and then, remove the dates as we go through. So leave them, but off to the side, you can, if this document needs to get updated, you can just write off to the side complete. But I just don't want to remove any dates from this.
I can make that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. And maybe mention, Mr. Chairman, the convention of committees being virtual with the COVID.
Yep, so our plan right now, let's see, where is that? There it is, Convention of the Committees, December 3rd, a little bit earlier this year, right, Adam? I think we had it did we have it in January last year?
I believe it was around the same time because whenever I do these, I don't like changing the dates that far off.
Okay. All right, but instead of eating pizza and yelling at each other from across the table at the senior center, that we will be convening it basically how we're meeting right now. More information to come, but good point. I like that you included that stuff in there.
Thank you. So I think if everybody holds on to that, well, once we finalize it, and then I'll send those out.
Okay, countdown to town meeting. We'll tick that off. Thank you for reviewing that. Revenue estimates.
Before we jump into the revenue estimates, I know we discussed this last year, level funded versus level service. The board just wants to continue how we did it last year. I know we covered that at length, so.
We have, and we've had a lot of discussions on that. I don't have anything to say about it.
Just keep doing it as we've.
Level service.
Okay. Okay, move on to the draft revenue estimates. As you can see,
I'll put it up on the screen, but I know it's going to be an eye chart for those watching at home. Maybe the people with 75-inch televisions, it'll come out better.
yeah, but I added it being color coded. See, if you scroll up to the top here, then the bottom. That way, it's a little bit easier.
I'm looking at the correct document, though, right?
You are.
Okay.
I mean, this is a early revenue estimate of where we're at right now. I mean, a lot of this is depending on where we are with when House 1 comes out. And I know we've been watching that state the UGGA dollars and where that's going to fall. But right now, if everything holds firm, the number stays the same. We're looking at approximately 17.7 million. That's if the transfers hold and the total state aid. I know we're concerned. We're always watching that. I think it's a budget where we'll have to obviously keep track of everything with our. But where I'm really going to be concerned is, when we go out to fiscal year 23. Obviously, this year we're going to have to keep a close eye on it. I do expect it to either stay flat or it to go down. The percentage it goes down, I think the state's kind of taking it. I think it's been mentioned at this meeting with the aid and the state government using their rainy day dollars. It's going to be something to watch. These are the best revenue estimates I came up with going through personal property taxes all the way down. Some of this is subject to the IMA and the agreement with Phillipston, but this is what I have so far. I'm not sure if you wanted me to go line through line. I know we've been on the workshop for a while, so if I could just perhaps take any questions.
Yeah, we don't need to go line by line, but if any of the board members have any specific questions that they pulled out, I'd like to point out that the growth estimates from real estate were 65,000, different from last year. Or down from last year, I should say. Otherwise, I mean, a lot of the revenue streams seemed accurate or good estimates to me. Within that, we don't have our Chapter 70 realizations, basically on the state aid.
Yeah, the cherry sheets.
Yeah.
And what I did too, I looked back at the actuals for fiscal year 20. Whenever I was going through each of the lines, I mean, this is I wanted to be more on the conservative end because we really truly don't know what fiscal year 22 is going to bring. But if we plan like we did fiscal year 21, I believe we will be in. We're planning and we're doing everything on the cautious end.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had pretty good discussions on being able to react to any significant drop in state aid. And I'd like to keep, as Carter had pledged, and now you're pledging to watch that. I think that's probably one of the most important things in this process. Otherwise, we're following the prescribed methodology that we've had for a few years now. So, again, state aid, that's the moving target.
And I know I just started not too long ago in this new role as town administrator. I know the board really, we're at almost $1 million nearly in our stabilization. But that's my last resort is to actually ever have to use those funds. But once again, with the COVID and the impacts in the out years, I think I may have mentioned this before, but we may have to look at our financial management policies I feel comfortable for 22, 23. I can't say the same about.
I understand.
Mr. Chair.
Yep, please go ahead, Tim.
I think these are great estimates, as it says right on the top of them. They're draft revenue estimates, and there's a lot of hard work went into this. Also, following in with the conversation for the out years, I'm aware of seeing all the correspondence back and forth. The state has graciously level funded us at our FY20 numbers for FY21, but FY22, 23, and beyond are still giant question marks. And none of us really know where that's going to go. My best guess is we can anticipate some decreases, but by how much, it's anybody's guess.
Absolutely right.
Okay, Adam, we can move on.
Yes. This is the comparison communities. This is something we adopted. We adopt every single year. The MMA didn't send out a new book, and I used that book to update this. I think if people are fine with the way I use these communities to do the studies with or do comparisons and moving forward, I think until I receive the newest one, I think they did a 2-year book last time around, and I think next year I'll get the new one, and then I could update the information on this.
So it says community comparisons for FY22 on the right-hand side, average single-family tax bill. We got tax rate per thousand. Why is the FY19 figure in there? Why wouldn't we have updated it to 19 and then 20?
Well, I use if you look at the source for the note, I use the 2019 to 2020 MA municipal directory, but what they did is they sent it out for that.
I see what you're saying. There wasn't.
And that's the challenge I had is I would have updated all of it, but they used, I think they're trying to save money. I don't know, but I didn't have the newest book to go through and put all that in there.
Okay. Where are we with it says population census 2016. Where do you think we accurately are population wise now?
Find out soon enough.
That's true.
And then once I get that information, I can
about to tip 9,000 from what I saw. You know, we talked a lot about population density during the initial like March and April. It was all about numbers. How many people, what's your percentages and otherwise. And much of the state data had us in the high 88, 8,900 mark. If you talk to the assessor, tax collector, we have had a lot of growth, a lot of building permits and otherwise. So I think we have more people in town than we have leaving town, despite what Facebook says. I'm not on it anymore, but I like to throw that out there. So our population, I want to say, is probably going to be where we wind up saying, you know, just off the cuff, we say, oh, the 8,000 residents of Templeton. I think soon enough we're going to be able to say the 9,000 residents of Templeton. We're well on our way to 10. Really, just an observation I had looking at this chart.
No, I think you're right. I think a lot of people want to move into town. I think this is certainly a community where people take pride and they really enjoy each village. They all have their characteristics, and I think
Baldwinville gave out the most full-sized candy bars this Halloween. I'm just saying.
I heard Hubbardston Road.
On that, I've been walking around Baldwinville on Halloween. I'm certainly glad that our community decided to have Halloween. It was really good to see people out there having fun safely. So that was just a little feedback that I thought I'd give since I brought it up.
And Scarecrows on the Common wasn't too bad.
Nope, I got mine out there, although it keeps falling down.
Mr.
I
Chairman.
thought it was great to see as many families out there too, and some of the costumes. I mean, it's really, I think Templeton gets the award for the best costumes because I've never seen so much enthusiasm. Maybe it's just I came from the Wild West, so.
Yeah. Tim, go ahead.
While we were chatting there, I went and looked up real quick on the Worcester County resources. The 2018 census is listed at 8,158.
8,158.
A slight decline from what we show on the comparison sheet.
Just doing the backward math with some of the Department of Public Health, that's where I had my larger estimates. And again, that you have to like reverse engineer how they got their, COVID rates and otherwise. So there was some state data that had it in the high 8,000s. So that'll be, like Adam alluded to, we're in a census year. It will be interesting to see where we get to.
And when I get that number, I will just update it. That way we'll have the latest there. And at the same time, we'll have the newer book too, so I can update all the other information.
Copy. Any other comments or concerns on the comparison communities?
I don't plan on adding to the census.
Adam will go into OPEB reports, but I do not have any, unless you want me to show the ones that you had put in email.
If you could just put up just the cover sheet and just the that page where it shows our liability going from 7.7 down to 4.8 million. If you could just put that one page up, just because that's information.
Got it.
Yeah.
Stand by. On the way.
Just scroll down. Just right there. So right here, you can see our total OPEB liability. This was we were at 7.7 million roughly, and then we dropped down to 4.8 million. I think this we can attribute to, and Carter mentioned it earlier in the meeting, is having the insurance trend rate, staying on top of that, a pledge stream of revenue to the trust fund that we do. We made a lot of improvements to retired employee contribution rates. This is something that we're going to have to keep track of, because Mike, if you can really quick, with that other attachment I emailed and the retirement chart, just so folks could see what I'm talking about. This is an OPEB liability, and that we have to watch, because once we could see the, oh, no, get out of that, not that, the other one.
The picture?
The picture, yes, please.
Just gotta share something else. Okay.
Okay, just so people can see, when we do our budget, you can see this is the Worcester Regional Retirement System. This is a unfunded retirement liability that we're responsible for paying. You can see that growing from at least when I started working here in 18. That's been going up and shifting upwards. So when that drops off in 2035, it looks off to 2036. That's when we could really tackle the OPEB liability with the town, because this retirement, we're going to have to really, it's going to have a budget impact, and we really have to. This is something that we have to do now. But as long as we plan long-term with our OPEB and we're putting money aside into those accounts, we're seeing that liability drop. We're making improvements. And I think we will do that. We'll continue. And we just want to make sure the liability is manageable. And the town's been taking strides in the right direction. And we just have to continue to do it. Moving forward. That's all I really have on that one.
Okay. Any questions on the OPEB change or impact feeling? Okay. Hearing nothing. We have nothing else on the list for this evening for review from Adam on the preparation for budget guidance documents. Any go backs at all?
Just thank you all for your time. We will be moving into budget season, so looking forward to those long Saturday meetings and all the fun that budget season brings.
Okay. If there are no go backs, let's see. Our next meeting is 9 November at 18 or 6:30 in the evening, and that is a Monday. The Wednesday is the federal holiday. It is Veterans Day. Tim and Jeff, thank you for your service, and just a quick thank you for all of our over 500 veterans in town. I'm very proud to call myself a veteran, along with the likes of Jeff and Tim and everybody else in town. So my heartfelt thanks goes out to all of them.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for your service as well.
Thanks. And so we'll be meeting on Monday.
Thanks, guys.
And with that, I'll, unless anyone has any go backs, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
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 I.
Any
Well,
opposed?
I'll miss everybody, but
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, we are adjourned. Steve, we can stop the live stream and the recording. Thank you. Good night.